Welcome back to the channel. I hope you enjoy. I met Lucifer in the desert, part 1. Many years ago, when I was in active duty, my unit was deployed far away into the scorching desert. We came under heavy artillery fire seemingly out of nowhere. I remember laying on my back, staring up at the sky, watching the clouds move as blood choked my last few struggling breaths. My comrade was sprawled on top of me, pinning me down, lifeless, with his head resting near my left ear. I didn't have the strength to push his dead weight off and see where my right leg used to be, but I could feel pain reassuring me to no doubt. I was able to barely make out the words that should have been my last. Please, God. The clouds suddenly stopped moving and the noise all around ceased to a deafening silence. I felt the presence around me, ancient and overpowering. Its energy washed over me and commanded all attention of my thoughts, forcing me to utter its name in a blood-spitting gasp. Lucifer, I was barely able to make out. Fear accompanied the utterance of that name in my mind, like a red carpet it proudly walked on to signify just how fucked you are when you are in that presence. I was his already, and I could feel hell welcoming me like a pack of dogs having fresh meat dangled in front of them. The body of my dead comrade on top of me suddenly started to post his arms and slowly lift his face up eye to eye with me. What used to be green eyes were now black. A soulless, pale face gazed at me, but I wasn't staring at the soldier I used to know anymore. I was looking at the fallen angel himself. His presence fills your mind and strangles your thoughts into obedience and attention to him. He'll only let you speak in his presence when he wants to hear you. His eyes stared into mine and studied my memories like someone flipping through pages in a file folder. His lips weren't moving, but I could hear him in my head whispering, toying with me. He drank in my fear of the torment ahead of me like a fine aged wine, supplementing it with transplanted thoughts of misery and eternal torment. What a sad end to your story. Abandoned by your family as a child, never loved by anyone. Nobody remembers you. How cruel God can be, don't you think? I heard you call for Father just now. So where is he? The words hissed in my head as if coming from all directions. His black eyes looked around and then back to me. His mouth curved into a slight grin. Maybe he is just busy. Would you like me to give him a call for you? He promised to make the pain stop if I would hear him out. Tears fell from my eyes as I was paralyzed with the ever-encroaching stings and reminders of a limb lost. I agreed, and when he snapped his fingers, the pain stopped. When he spoke with his words this time, the hissing went away. It's hard to put human words on the sound of his voice. The best way I can honestly describe it is that it carried a remnant of heaven and former glory, but it still had an underlying tone of the harshness of reality and indifference. This probably won't make sense to anyone. You just had to be there to understand. Life has been unfair to you, hasn't it? I smell no love in you, not a hint nor a tease. What if I told you I can change that? I can give you a life having worth lived, full of riches and treasures. You don't have to die here today. You can live if you so will it. Lucifer unstrapped my combat helmet and stroked my hair in a gentle way. He then reached back and touched the stump where my leg had been. I was assuming you might want that back as well. Consider it included. Now, those are your needs. Let's talk about mine, shall we? I have a little collection I have been making, a hobby, so to speak. I won't bore you with the details, but to complete this little project, I need about 15 more pieces to my collection. That's where you come in. I need someone with a specific skill set to work with. I believe I am looking at that someone right now. He took out a lighter and a cigarette from his front pocket. He lit it and took a drag, then he put the butt into my mouth so I could have a drag. He was reading my mind exact. After he took another drag, he continued to speak. Life is all about choices, Will, so here is your most important decision yet. You can take my offer and I will let you live. I will give you a life with worth and purpose. In return, you will help me gather my 15 pieces. If you decline, you will simply die as you were fated. You will probably have a good idea by now that you're coming with me in that case, and I most definitely would love to have you. I even have a room already picked out for you. He put the cigarette back in my mouth and let me have one more drag. He brought his lips to my ear and whispered, "Do we have a deal?" My thoughts pleaded to God and every angel my mind could think of, but any hope of heaven's light was washed away by gut-wrenching truth of reality. Prolongment was my only option if I didn't want to face an eternity of unthinkable horror. I dreaded what I knew I would inevitably do, and cringed at the thought of what he would make me become. "Yes," I said. I remember seeing the clouds starting to move again, and a hand covering my eyes, causing blackness to prevail. As soon as I opened them, I was in a bed inside sickbay. I had made it back to base camp with no recollection of how I got there. Sweat poured down my body as I sat up, hoping this was all just a dream. My right leg was in its proper place, with no signs of harm or damage. The medic came in to tend to what injuries I did sustain. He filled me in on what had happened to my unit. Some asshole officer mixed the coordinates up when artillery fire was called. I was the only survivor. My enlistment was up 2 months later. I opted to go back to civilian life. When the time came to go back home, I was able to grab the last shuttle from the base to the airport that day. As the bus departed, the 2 soldiers next to me started gossiping away. One mentioned an artillery officer found with his throat slit and his tongue nailed to his forehead. I chuckled when I heard this, and when the soldiers looked at me, I pretended to cough. The first thing I did when I got back home was visit my favorite spot, a little park about 30 minutes away from my house. It had a pond in the middle surrounded by a walkway. I could have spent hours just enjoying the solitude. I listened to the old man behind me play the blues on his guitar. I always remembered him being here, even before I was deployed overseas. His white hair was vibrant against his dark skin. A young couple jogged past me on the walkway. I knew he was here when the silence hit. That unrelenting silence always marks his arrival. That's the end of part 1. Thanks for taking the time to listen to one of my videos. I'll catch you in the next one. Ciao.